WPRocket is the best WordPress caching plugin that is out there, especially when it comes to how beginner friendly it is to use, and yet still powerful enough to take care of most of the speed related issues that a website is going to have. So if you're not familiar with terms like gzip compression, caching, cache preloading, minification, and so on, well, WPRocket makes it easy so that you don't have to spend your time learning what in the world those actually mean and then how to actually go about fixing them manually. Now, I recently installed and configured WPRocket on a website that I was working on that was struggling to improve their page speed and also unable to pass Google's Core Web Vitals test. So I'll link to a video below where I shared the 3 steps that I took, including installing and setting up WPRocket to dramatically improve this site's page speed. But here, I'm going to show you exactly how to install and configure WPRocket, even if you don't understand all this technical jargon, but you still want to have a fast-loading, well-performing website. So let's get this set up. Now, the first thing that you want to do before you even think about installing WPRocket is you want to test your website to see how quickly it loads. So that way we have a before and after comparison. Otherwise, you're going to go through this, you're going to set it up, and then not really know how much it's actually helped you. So we're going to test this out. Now, there's a couple of free tools that you can use to test out your page speed. The first is GTmetrix. And here you simply need to put in the URL of your website, and then you want to select the closest location to you, and then you can select Analyze. Another free tool is called Pingdom Website Speed Test. Again, you'll put in the URL of your website, select the closest location to you, and start the test. Now, it'll take a few seconds to run the test, and then it is going to give you some stats. Now, we really want to look at the page size, and we also want to look at the load time. Those are very important. What I recommend is you can write this down, but it's probably easiest just to take a screenshot of this, save this file so that you can compare this very easily once you get WPRocket set up. All right, let's get WPRocket installed now. So we're going to head over to our dashboard and go to plugins, and we're going to upload the plugin file. So once you have created your account at WPRocket, you will have the downloadable file. We will select the file and install now. Now WPRocket has been installed, and we just need to activate the plugin. Now that we have installed WPRocket, we can go to Settings and WPRocket. This is going to take us to our WPRocket dashboard. And as you can see, it says WPRocket is now activated and already working for you. That's because now that you've installed it, it's already starting to do the work and you haven't done a thing. So what's actually fun to do is at this point, before we touch another thing, is go back over to GTmetrix, go back over to the Pingdom website speed test, whichever one you used initially, and then run the test again. And see if your page size has decreased. See if your site is now loading faster already. That's because it's already starting to take care of things for you. Just make sure that you run the same test and you run it from the same location that you did the first time, just so it is a better comparison. So what we're going to do here is we are going to be walking through how to set this up. And even if you don't know how to code, you don't understand all the terminology in here, don't worry, because you don't have to. This is very, very simple. And this really only takes you a couple of minutes. And as I said, WPRocket has taken care of most of the work for you already, just having installed it. But we're going to go tweak a couple of things just to really enhance the results even more. But I always think it's a good idea to understand the tools that you are actually using rather than just randomly using them as well. So now that WPRocket has already started caching your pages, and this is what's really going to help your site's performance. Let's come over here to the cache tab. And this is really going to make the biggest difference for you and help to improve your site's performance. So really, when we are talking about caching, this is where they're going to create static files of your website. And then when a visitor comes, the page is already there and it's ready for them. So they're not having to re-pull the entire web page. Now I'm going to turn this sidebar off so we can see these settings here. But as you notice, Caching is already enabled here under our mobile settings. So we can just leave that as is. Now there is an option here for separate cache files for mobile devices. So basically what this means here is that they are going to have separate cache files for mobile devices and for desktop. So that way they're going to have a separate cache system. Now under user cache here, you really only need to enable this if people are going to be logging into your website. So if you think about an e-commerce store or a membership site, this is talking about restricted content. If someone has to log in to access any type of restricted content, that's when you want to enable caching for those users. This site in particular doesn't have that, so I'm going to uncheck that. So probably most sites are going to have that. But again, anytime someone needs to log into your website to access content, access an account, that's when you will want to enable that. Now, the cache lifespan down here at the bottom, this is how long will the cache be, the snapshot that they're taking of your site. Now, you're going to see the default here is set to 10 hours. Now, you can change this to days, you can increase this up or down, and this just has it as 10 hours to start with. That works for most sites. If for some reason you have a site that is constantly churning out content, that is really just constantly updating their site, if you want to think about like a news site, for instance, or something that has a feed that's constantly changing, well, then you may want to decrease this. But for most, this lifespan of 10 hours is going to be fine. And if you don't change it that often, then you can even increase this as well. So we'll go ahead and save these changes. That's all we need to do for the cache tab. Now we'll move on to file optimization. Now this is where you're going to be able to minify. This means you're going to be able to reduce HTML, white space, comments, so on. And this is all about really reducing the file size of your pages. So already enabled for you is the minify CSS files. Now this overall doesn't usually do a whole lot to help with page speed. And when you start messing with CSS files, it can start to cause problems. So this is something that I like to get everything set up. And then if you want to come back and test this because you feel like it needs to be improved even further, you can test this out. This is why I like to run this on a staging site. So for instance, I use Cloudways. That way I can instantly create a staging site. I can run a plugin like WPRocket or make any changes and then push those live as long as everything looks good. So I'm not impacting my live site. But for now, we're just going to leave those settings as is here, and you can always come back. JavaScript, again, you can minify those JavaScript files, but I prefer with these types of files here not to change any of the default settings. If this is something that you are familiar with from CSS, JavaScript, then that is something that you can choose to customize. If you're getting errors about specific JavaScript files or CSS files, then you're going to be able to put them into those boxes here. So those can be excluded if, let's say, that there's an error or something going on with your site once you enable these settings. We'll go ahead and save those changes and head over to the media tab. All right, we are moving our way through here quite quickly already. And media is one that's actually very important to pay attention to because usually this is where you're really going to be able to improve your page size and the speed of the site. Because images are usually the top issue for most people, for most sites, unless they have videos. They have lots of those videos, which causes their website to really slow down. And often we run into media type issues, image issues, because images are uploaded at sizes that are larger than how they're actually going to appear on the website, and they're not optimized. So it's very important to shrink those images down to the size they're actually going to appear on the website and run those through an optimization service. Lots of free options out there for that, but that's for another video. Have questions about it, ask down in the comments below. I'll help you there. But assuming your images are now sized properly, they've been optimized, this is where lazy load can help you. Now, basically what lazy load is the website will not load images until a user gets to that image. So if you have an image halfway down the page, at the bottom of the page, it's not actually going to load it until the visitor actually scrolls to that part of the page. And it can do the same thing here, as you can see, for iframes and videos. So we do like to make sure that we have this enabled for our images. Now, if you are using YouTube images, you're embedding them on the site, then this is helpful too as well, replacing the YouTube iframe with the preview image. Again, so it's not loading that whole video if that is not needed as well. Now, there's a couple of other settings here, but we've taken care of the biggest part here, lazy load. We have image dimensions. If you want to have any images that don't have a width and a height attribute added to them, and we don't want that to throw off the layout of the site, we can have WPRocket automatically add those image dimensions. Now, embeds is one that can be important for certain sites. So if you have content and other people embed your content from your site on theirs, well, that actually is going to pull those requests from your website and that can slow down your website. So it's good to go ahead and disable those WordPress embeds. Now, WebP images is something that is helpful for images with certain browsers. And this is going to help those images load faster. And so if you have those images available, here they're recommending that you use this particular tool here in order to create those images. But once you do, it can help create caching for those images, which is helpful as well. So let's save those changes. And let's head to the Preload tab. Now with Preload, WPRocket will start generating your cache immediately. This is done by default. So when you get to the Preload tab, you're going to see that they've already activated preloading, which means that they have started to generate the cache for your web pages. Now you can activate a sitemap, and really what this is going to do here is this is going to allow you to put in your sitemap URL here, and this is going to let WPRocket know of all of the pages and posts that you have available on your website. If you are using an SEO plugin like Yoast, for example, this site is using, or Rank Math, which I love, and they have generated a sitemap for you, then you can go ahead and enable this right here, and that will take care of it for you. Scrolling down a bit, we have preload links. So anytime someone starts to hover over a particular link, it starts to preload that content automatically so that that page can be served a bit faster to them. Next up, we have prefetch DNS requests. And if you're like, whoa, what does that mean? This is simply if you use any third-party content on your website, then the visitor's browser actually has to go out and retrieve that file from the other domain. So what happens is this request, it will actually prefetch that file before it's needed, so that the page is going to load a little bit faster for you. So let's say that you use fonts that are going to load from Google or a video from YouTube. Then you can add in the origin domain right here to this request option. Now, you just want to make sure that you remove the HTTPS and you just start the double slash in the URL. So for instance, if you were using Google Font, you would just do the / fonts.googleapis.com, and that is how you would leave it. If there's another one, then you would enter it on a new line. Now here we can preload the font. So again, just as an example, if you have the fonts, then you'll be able to put in the URL here and that will preload that for you. All right, we can click Save Changes here for our preload. And let's go on to advanced rules. Now, if you are not a developer and increasing your page speed and getting into the code in order to fix all of the issues that come up in order to improve your page speed, if all of that is just not your thing, that's not you or what you do, then I would just recommend staying out of advanced rules, because really everything that you really need is already taken care of in the other settings. Most of it's already done by default. So there's not a lot that you really need to do in advanced settings here. So if you are that developer, you do want to do some tweaks, well, then you'll come in here so you can handle more advanced caching issues in here. So let's just move on to the database. Now, the database here, this is where really this whole section is for people who just like to keep their site pretty clean. So I'll be honest, this section probably isn't going to do a whole lot of good in terms of boosting your page speed, but it just makes sure that you have a clean database. So for instance, when you have a WordPress site, anytime that you edit any new post, it keeps the revisions, every single revision that you do for those posts, those pages. So if you like to keep the site clean, you don't want to house all of those, then this is where you can do this post cleanup. So you can see right now we have 469 revisions that are being stored in the database. We have a couple of auto drafts and trash posts. So this way we can start to clean those up. You can do the same for the comment section, even though WordPress is automatically going to get rid of those within 30 days for you. So I really don't worry about things like that. And you can also do this for transients cleanup and your database cleanup. Now, the last thing that I really want to mention about this section, you do have an automatic cleanup option. So you can schedule an automatic cleanup, and then you can select how often you want this to actually happen. Now, my recommendation, as they are recommending here as well, but I just want to draw your attention to it, is make sure if you select a weekly cleanup or a monthly cleanup that you are having your website automatically backed up before this runs, because you never know if this could cause any issues for some reason. So always have that backup. But regardless, you should always have a backup of your site anyway. All right, so let's go on to the next tab. We are almost done here. We are doing great. This is a CDN, and a CDN is a content delivery network. So let's say, if you're not familiar with this, real quick, content delivery network. If this server your site is housed on is in California, let's say, and a user in France is trying to access your site, they will then have to retrieve the information from the server in California. And when you have a CDN, that has parts of your site on servers around the world so that the user in different parts of the world can then retrieve the information from a location closer to them, which helps your page load even faster for them. So WPRocket has a Rocket CDN, as you can see here. That's something you can use, but you don't have to. You can use a free CDN like Cloudflare, for instance. The only downfall with Cloudflare's free plan is that it doesn't help with images. So if images are a big issue, you'll need to upgrade to their paid plan or use something like Rocket CDN. But this is also something that you can also wait to do, see what impact all of the things that we're doing right now have. And if you still need to increase your site or you want it to be even better, then you can consider a CDN after that. So this is where you can enable a content delivery network and get your CDN set up in here. Next up, we have Heartbeat API. So we're going to take a look at this. And this is a way for a WordPress site to talk to a hosting server, really to make sure everything is good to go. So if you're editing your post and then someone else tries to edit it, it's going to lock it. So we don't want to disable this completely, but you can reduce the activity. You can really control this Heartbeat API if you want to. So we want to leave control Heartbeat on here. And then we come down here, this is where you can reduce or disable your Heartbeat activity. And as you can see by default, we do not want to disable it. We just want to leave it as reduce activity, which is there now. So let me show you a couple more things. One is the add-ons that are available. Now, some of these maybe you want to use, some of them you don't. The first one we have here is Varnish. Now, for Varnish, if your hosting provider has this, so you'll want to check with whoever your hosting provider is. Once WP Cache purges all of the cache, Varnish will do the same thing. So for instance, if you use Cloudways, which I highly recommend, like if you want to have a fast loading website, you want to host it on Cloudways. Why? Because you won't ever have to change your host again and you're going to get the best speed. So this is telling me already your site is hosted on Cloudways because that's where I host any website, any client sites, any of my sites. We have enabled a Varnish auto purge for compatibility. So we're already done there. Now you can also connect Cloudflare. We talked about CDNs. You can do that here. And this is a security cache that if you want to use security, you can add that here as well. Now let's take a look at image optimization here real quick. This is what I was talking about. If you want to have those WebP images, you want to have the images that are compressed, they make your site all faster, then you can do that and you can get this plugin here and install that. But we're not going to go through that whole plugin here. So we only have a couple of sections left, and these are really fast tools. We have export settings. So what's really nice about WPRocket is after you go through everything we've just been through, and then you set everything up the way you want it, if you install WPRocket on other sites that you own or other client sites, then you can simply download the settings here. And then when you log into the other site, you can simply come back to tools and import those settings, and you're done. You don't have to redo all of this for every single site. And lastly, under tools, if you had any issue on your website and you need to roll back any major version of anything, then you can do that here so it can fix the site. And that's really everything that you need to do here. There is the last section or tab here, which is tutorials. If for any reason I've missed anything or there's anything you want to know more about, you can simply come to the tutorials and learn a bit more about it. So let's pop back over to our dashboard here real quick. One last thing is if you have made some significant changes or anything to your website, this is where you can remove all of the cache files, and then you can start cache preloading again. So it will just give a new cache of all of your updated files here. Now what you want to do, head back over to GT Metrics or Pingdom, wherever you tested before. Run that test again. Let me know the difference in the page size and your load time. Let me know how different and how much better it is now that you have set up WPRocket. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.